Kenshi is an ugly, miserable, pathetic loser who was hired to assassinate a queen in a parallel world but ended up becoming her servant, and enrolling in an academy for mecha warriors to fight giant robots and evil bandits to save his friends. After Kenshi was ice-skated by a mysterious group, the unlucky RIZZ loser was turned into an assassin in order to gain his freedom. However, man couldn't even pull a proper assassination and ended up being taken captive by the princess, who turned him into her personal handyman, forcing him to the weirdest of jobs while enrolled in a girls' school. During the coronation ceremony of the Princess Lashara, a guard finished her shift of paroling the area in a giant mecha robot called a Seikijin, and was marveled at the amount of battleships that gathered round the Shitoryu Empire for that event. Her superior informed her of the many male mecha riders they called Seikishi, which they hired to serve as guards before guiding her through a safe route, and reminding her that the Ahu emissions from the Seikishi were too dangerous for normal humans. As the ceremony started, Lashara arrived looking like a midget version of Cinderella and was crowned as the new ruler in front of all the vassals while a bunch of mysterious men watched from the shadows. Sometime later, Kenshi activated his Seikijin and was sent by a mysterious man to attack the floating ship which was carrying Lashara. On the ship, Lashara and some of her companions were staring at a broken down Seikijin, and they soon got word of a Seikishi attacking the vessel. Lashara didn't seem surprised by this, but when the captain of her guards named Chiaya herself after seeing the invader and tells them it's a white Seikijin, they all get shocked. Just as Chiaya was about to rush off to smoke his ass, Lashara stops her and tells her not to kill him since she wanted to question him. A guard named Ulite asked Lashara if they should call the elite guards, but she refused since she trusted Chiaya and didn't want to rely on one of them named Aura. Chiaya soon got into her pink-colored Seikijin and faced off against Kenshi. They clashed swords intensely, but Kenshi pushed her back and she was shocked that he was that good at combat. After another failed attempt at beating him in a mecha sword battle, she fired lasers which he dodged easily and tried blinding him with a flash shot before slicing him to bits, but Kenshi evaded that as well. Meanwhile, inside the ship, Lashara's guards were attacked by an unknown purple Seikijin driven by a masked man that now had her cornered. As he tried making pork chops of her, a quirky girl named Wahanli showed up riding a Seikijin and saved her. As Lashara escaped, Wahanli and the intruder began fighting, and she ended up tricking him before using gunpowder to land a devastating attack on him which forced him to retreat. Wahanli tried to stop the coward from running, but soon a black Seikijin piloted by a mysterious lady named Doll came to eat him away. That didn't stop her though, as she pulled an American breathing first form and began blasting at them. But Doll used her useless comrade as a shield, allowing them to get away. Meanwhile, Kenshi kept fighting Chiaya while the other intruders blamed him for their failures. They instructed him to kill Lashara to earn his freedom from them, but he was soon outnumbered as Wahanli joined Chiaya to face him. But Kenshi, driven by his strong desire to return home, released his limiters and overpowered the girls before his Seikijin ran out of control and started corroding. Kenshi brute-forced on degrading machine to where Lashara was ready to finish the job himself, and although the Empress didn't mind him doing it, but he asked to run away with her instead. Chiaya soon interrupted and was shocked to see a rare male Seikishi but tried to kill him anyways. But Lashara stopped her since she decided to use his skills to her advantage. The next day, Kenshi woke up completely naked in a large bird cage, and Chiaya soon visited to give him his clothes. She informed him that his comrades didn't give two fucks about him since he was their sacrificial lamb and threatened to kill him if he didn't cooperate. A while later, Lashara's maid named Meyer asked her to report the attack on their ship to the Holy Land, and as they made their way there, the queen ended up recruiting Wahanli since she's a tech sis, despite the fact that Chiaya wasn't a fan of the idea. Wahanli later informed Chiaya that their damaged Seikijins would take a while to repair, but just then Chiaya's sister Mixaya showed up dressed as something out of a brothel and cuddled Chiaya and Lashara for a bit. A while later, Chiaya told her about the attack and Kenshi being captured, but she was more concerned about trying to ship them. Before long, Lashara visited Kenshi herself to prove they're nice people, but Chiaya ruined it with her ridiculous attempt at playing tsundere. A while later, one of Kenshi's associates named Doll came to get him, and as they escaped, the elite guards spotted them and their elven leader took action. Meanwhile, Chiaya freaked out when she heard of Kenshi's escape and borrowed Wahanli's Seikijin to go after him. Aboard the enemy floating ship, the masked handler noticed Lashara put a magic transmitter on Kenshi and informed him their plan was to kill him as a sacrificial pawn instead of sending him to his home world like they promised. When he tried to do so, Kenshi fought his way out of a bunch of armed guards and ran off. The masked douchebag who was now piloting his Seikijin chased Kenshi, who he noticed was sick, but Kenshi jumped off their airship to escape him. Aura, who'd been watching them, jumped in and saved him, but as the masked lunatic tried killing them off, Chihaya swooped in to save them. Later on, Aura tried to take Kenshi into Lashara's quarters to get an explanation of the matter, but Chihaya blocked her off before the queen herself showed up and invited her in. Just then Mixaya showed up and identified Kenshi's illness as an epidemic called Rochator, which made Wahanli speculate that he may be from Kuchai. Kenshi soon collapsed from a high fever and was taken to the infirmary, and Ulite even informed the girls he'd be dead in 6 hours. Wahanli brought up a cure which she'd heard of, however Ulite explained that they didn't have any. Aura and Mixaya decided to go get some to save his life, so they split up while making their way to the shallow rivers where the herb grows. At Kenshi's bedside, Lashara wondered how he was summoned from another world, but things soon got wild again when the invaders attacked. Chihaya engaged all 3 of them in her Seikijin, which was only half ready, but she was overwhelmed since she wasn't used to taking on multiple at once. At the riverside, Aura tried searching for the plant only for Doll to show up. Meanwhile at their base, just as the enemy soldiers were about to send Chihaya 6 feet under, the cavalry showed up, which was Wahanli driving an armored tank of her own design, which she used to ice-sky one of them. On the other end, Aura reached her limit, and as a last resort, she emitted a dark elf field that paralyzed Doll. Meanwhile, the masked madman soon gained the upper hand in the battle of guns, and Wahanli soon ran out of bullets, which meant they were all When Mixaya met up with Aura and saw her looking like a used diaper, she asked why she didn't call on to her for help. Aura said the drug was more important, and since Mixaya had already retrieved a bunch of it, they made their way back. At their home base, the girls used some trickery to land a serious attack which destroyed one of the masked intruder's Seikijin's arms. He intended to retaliate but saw that Aura and Mixaya had returned and he was outnumbered, so he ran off like a guy with plastic balls. A while later, the girls used the herb to try to revive Kenshi, while the masked man begged his boss for another chance with Doll, but he refused and told him to focus on his new orders. After the call, he removed his mask for the first time to reveal the face of a spoiled brat. Not long after that, Kenshi woke up and the girls were pleased to see his complete recovery, after which he thanked them. As the swan arrived at the Holy Land, Chihaya asked what she planned to do with Kenshi, and got shocked when the Empress said she'd bring him along as her attendant. Lashara added that his powers were essential and that she'd like to see how he'd change since his luck was similar to hers. Lashara asked Kenshi to assume the role of her attendant while boldly claiming she'd taken a liking to him, and after a bit of hesitation, he followed them. As they made their way there, Lashara explained that the Holy Land was a sacred religious ground and its academy is where future Seikishi are trained. As they approached the gate, Kenshi spotted some peculiar floating spaceships, and Lashara told him they were Seikijin prototypes called Seikishin and explained the protocols for the different vessels entering the gates. When they got to the academy, they met up with the spoiled brat from earlier named Dagmire, and while Lashara exchanged pleasantries with him, Chihaya wondered if he was the masked invader. When Dagmire left, Kenshi noticed how Chihaya acted around him and asked if she liked him, but she slapped him and said they were just childhood friends. A while later, they visited the Seibukai, which was a battleground for Seikishi in the continent. Lashara informed Kenshi that ceremonies were also held there, and Wahanli and Chihaya would officially be appointed as Seikishi the next day in that area. She also said that she'd bring Kenshi there and present him as her attendant there. Sometime later, they met up with the princess of Habaniwa named Maria, who was Lashara's cousin. The cousins compared plot sizes and eventually they dragged Kenshi into their childish squabble, along with Maria's attendant, Yukine. A while later, Lashara put a dog collar on Kenshi and they gossiped about Maria for a bit before she told him that he could one day marry her cousin if he played his cards right. Naturally, the clueless noob wondered what the she was talking about, so she explained how arranged marriages between Seikishi were a thing in that world to ensure high-caliber warriors were born. Chihaya added that female Seikishi had freedom in relationships, but the males were treated like livestock for breeding since they were just few in number. Kenshi was about to lose it, but Chihaya gaslighted him into accepting his fate as a breeding NPC in his own anime. This got him depressed, but Chihaya comforted him with the fact that he was still too young for marriage and he might find a way back to his world before he fell prey to the matriarchy. She then told him to keep his Isekai MC status a secret for his safety, to which he stupidly responded saying he could marry her. But bro had less RIZZ than Kevin Hart. She nearly cut his balls off before Wahanli interrupted them, drawing their attention to something serious happening. They arrived at the Seibukai where Wahanli prepared to face a Seikijin that challenged her for a duel. As the combatants suited up, Masaki joined the gang dressed appropriately this time since she was a teacher there and she was accompanied by Ulight. The battle began, and both girls in mecha suits crossed laser swords like they were in a Star Wars movie. Kenshi noticed Wahanli was getting her ass handed to her because her settings were tampered with, but he had faith in her abilities anyways. The other fired several blasts that took out her robot's right arm. But even with that, Wahanli maneuvered her way into victory in no time. A while later, they arrived at Lashara's castle where she ordered the maids to make final adjustments to Chihaya and Wahanli's ceremonial outfits before Chihaya dragged Kenshi to his room and told him to stay put. But not long after she left, Kenshi said "F that" and jumped out his window to wander around like a hyperactive husky only for him to be ambushed by some elven warriors. Kenshi held his own against them, but just as they were about to dice him up, Aura showed up and stopped the men who were apparently her guards. She explained his situation to them and asked why Kenshi was scavenging the forest like Dora. He explained that doing hobo stuff like that was his hobby, and she noticed a rare mushroom which he found. When he saw how much her guards drooled over it, he gave it to them as a thank you gift for Aura for saving his life. Meanwhile at the castle, the girls tried out their ceremonial outfits and they decide to help Wahanli out in cleaning out her workshop with plans to make Kenshi do the manual labor. At the same time, Kenshi asked about Aura's marriage situation and she explained that fixed Seikijin marriages are essential for the nation's growth and military power. While Kenshi walked back, he ran into Ulight looking worn out and resting on a tree. The young slave boy gave him a herbal drink to help him out, but it turned out to be dog piss and it made his illness worse. Kenshi apologized to a now bedridden Ulight, but his attendant told him to take his NPC energy elsewhere, so he left. Kenshi ran into Yukain on his way back and explained what happened to her. He then remembered what Lashara said and asked Yukain if she'd be okay with getting married and having kids with a stranger. She said she'd be down for it if it'd stop wars. Just then, Chihaya crashed the party and dragged Kenshi's ass back home. Kenshi helped Wahanli out with her workshop cleanup while she showed him the robots she built. She later explained that they were called Kikujin and they operated using steam instead of Ahu. He tried to suggest it as an alternative for Seikijin, but she said it was for field work, and then rambled on some more mind-numbing politics and science before Masaki showed up. She tried to jump in on their conversation, but a bunch of female students she'd rizzed up came and dragged her away. Later on, Ulight was plotting with a mysterious voice but got interrupted by Kenshi, who was worried about his well-being. He told Kenshi his drink actually worked and he was feeling better, so Kenshi said he'd make more for him. The two bonded for a bit and Kenshi resisted the urge to spill his secret of being from another world before Ulight asked him which girl he liked and he ran off like a little. The next day, Kenshi's eyeballs rolled out when he saw Wahanli and Chihaya in their lusty ceremonial wear as they were officially appointed as Seikishi when the official put cat ears on them, and this made Kenshi wonder what kind of bizarre world he was in. One evening, Kenshi used his super farm boy skills to gather as much food from the forest as he could. The next day, while Chihaya trained, she noticed he was preparing a feast for some reason. At the same time, Lashara and Maya discussed how Dagmayer's father, Babylon, had been appointed prime minister. This made Lashara disregard her previous suspicions of him being behind the attack since he's now in control of Shidarayu. She made it clear that she intended to build a country of her own and not inherit the right to rule like him. Later on during tea, Lashara suggested that Kenshi worked at the academy dorms to earn his keep, but he then accused her of being a broke, which made her throw a tantrum before explaining that taking funds from her country would mean revealing his identity. Kenshi, being the lazy bum that he is, still opposed the idea since he could just hunt for his food like he did earlier, but Lashara baits him into agreement by bringing up his goal to find a way home. A while later, Kenshi arrived at the academy and his magnet RIZZ field was so strong that he had to run away from the girls. He met the principal in her office where she explained to him that he'll earn money based on the difficulty of jobs he completes, which he was totally down for. On the way to the academy hall, the principal informed Kenshi that he'd be working mainly for upperclassmen, and this got him worried since they're all girls, so she warned him to focus on the game instead of their plots. She then put him in the care of one of her associates who took him to an underground factory where he was shocked to see Ahu energy being used to move things. He asked if the academy being understaffed was due to financial issues, but she revealed it's because the graduates recruit most of their staff. She later introduced him to Georgie, a girl he'd be working with. Georgie showed him the ropes and left him in charge of cleaning a bunch of bedrooms, but she was shocked to see he finished at lightning speed. Since he was such a master of grunt work, the other employees were shocked with how quickly and easily he did all of his work. While running an errand, Kenshi ran into Aura and explained that he was now a worker at the Holy Land. Coincidentally, she needed a staff member for help, so she took him to a cliff where a girl named Lappy's handkerchief had been thrown down. She explained that Lappy's was a victim to tribal bullies and suggests they find a rope to help Kenshi retrieve it. But before they knew it, the young doofus pulled a Spider-Man and got the handkerchief back. Lappy's thanked him and he ran off to continue his chores as they headed back to class. A while later, the division leaders were arguing over who'd have Kenshi in their division, and the principal calmed them down saying he'd help with everything. She was about telling them not to overwork him, but they all noticed Kenshi being the ultimate cargo horse all on his own. He worked at the cafeteria where the head chef was blown away by his cooking skills before sending him on a special delivery. He arrived at the home of the delivery and saw Aura and a girl she introduced as the Pope's granddaughter, Lithia. What wait, Lithia was actually a foul-mouthed, and she began comparing him to wild animals before Aura apologized on her behalf. When Kenshi left, his RIZZ powers awakened and a swarm of academy girls cornered him. Lashara, Chiaya and Wahanli enjoyed the show as he was chased around by a bunch of girls who eventually got left in the dust and collapsed from exhaustion. The next day, the principal summoned Kenshi to her office and showered him praises for being great at chores and repairs. Kenshi explained that he was great at repairs because his dad was a construction worker, and effective at chores because his sisters were lazy hippos. She then assigned him to a new job post and he was shocked to see Mixaya there. Mixaya informed him that his next job as an aesthetician meant he'd be washing the bodies of female seikijin at the academy. But before he could make himself scarce, Lashara showed up and convinced him, saying the job was because the ladies fell for his RIZZ. Mixaya dragged his ass into the workstation while promising to teach him everything she knows. By the time her lecture was over, Kenshi looked like Dracula pulled one on him while Mixaya looked radiant as she explained to Lashara and the others that it's because she taught him things he shouldn't do at his new workstation. She then ordered him to give Chiaya some treatment, and like a soulless robot, he chased her around and carried her into the spa room. Lashara heard happy noises through the door, and Chiaya soon ran out of the room half naked while being shaken from the possibly traumatizing experience. The next day, Mixaya went around convincing all the girls to make use of Kenshi's services, and afterwards most of the girls at the Holy Land had overly sensitive bodies. Lashara, however, was forbidden by the principal from using Kenshi's sessions because of the erotic side effects, but she was rather pleased with this result because she felt he'd have a lot of takers at his debut. Sometime later, Kenshi was assigned to join the rest of the bathhouse staff in washing the backs of more students. A bunch of girls showed up and were excited to have Kenshi wash their bodies. A while later, Dagmeier and a guy named Cliff formed an alliance. That evening, Kenshi was worn out after his duties and Ulite showed up to talk with him. He whined about his job, but Ulite told him about some exceptional Seikishi from another world who always followed their desires. Kenshi then brought up a weird marking on the back of some of the ladies he washed, and he explained that it was a contraceptive barrier. Mixaya soon showed up and begged him to elope with her because apparently she was being chased by a giant robot being controlled by Wahanli and some other girls who were ticked off by the things she and Tenchi did. They chased both of them around and wrecked the academy, making Dagmeier stunned to see a Kikujin in action for the first time. As they caused even more chaos, the principal told Lashara that they'd all be summoned to her office the next day. The next morning, the principal informed a lot of them that they'd be banned from the academy until they repair everything they destroyed during their playtime, while Kenshi would supervise the repairs. A while later, Dagmeier told his assistant that a device like a Kikujin that didn't run on Ahu energy could be used to capture the castle. The next day, Kenshi rallied the girls for the repair job, but when he saw their attitudes, he wondered if doing it himself would be faster. Sometime later, Kenshi and the gang did the repair work while Lashara and Maria were lazing around at the corner. Lithia confronted them, but they clapped back, stating that the student council president was also useless at manual labor, which was why she did lunch duty instead. That evening, the gang finished up the repairs and the girls later went to ease themselves up with a refreshing bath. As the girls had their bath, Lithia complained that Kenshi was there and they decided not to let him massage them for their own good. Kenshi was happy to get out of there, but Mixaya stopped him, and they all stripped him naked and gave him a massage. Afterwards, they had a meeting where Mixaya announced they'd been permitted to return to school the next day, but Chiaya noticed Tenchi's arms had some injuries on them. A while later, Meyer informed Lashara that someone was digging up holes all over the swan, and Chiaya remembered the Kenchi's hand bruises and stopped them from reporting to the Holy Land. Before long, Lashara and Chiaya both got a set of binoculars and did a stakeout to catch the culprit in action. They saw Kenshi entering a hole he dug up, and as he exited another hole with a crystal, Chiaya was waiting there to catch him. The girls questioned the gold digger why he was leaving holes that could impair the swan's movements, and he explained that he always filled them back up afterwards. Lashara asked about his weird fixation with crystals, so he narrated an incident from his childhood where his sister arrived at the lake with a crystal spaceship and how he was enchanted by its appearance. Lashara asked if people were allowed to own spaceships in his world, and the airhead said no before realizing his sister may have been Darth Vader's accomplice. Lashara explained that owning a spaceship was impossible since projects with spaceships only existed to send people to the moon, and she asked if maybe he was from the future instead of another world. Kenshi then remembered how his sister hypnotized him into keeping her spaceship a secret, and he got pissed. Sometime later, Chihaya found a weird pendant he was wearing, and he explained that it was a fragment of his sister's spaceship. But then she accidentally broke the necklace, which made him cry like a little. Chihaya met up with Maya to repair the necklace, but the old maid was more useless than a Sakura and told her to visit some craftsmen in the city instead. The city craftsman also couldn't fix it, so she was directed to go meet a Seikijin's personal craftsman instead. While wandering the academy hopelessly, she runs into Ulite along with Yukain and Maria, and her face lit up when she realized Yukain fit the criteria she was searching for. A while later, Yukain looked into the broken necklace and explained that repairing it might take a lot of time. Ulite then inspected it himself, and Maria suggested Chihaya replace the chain of the necklace with a braided string which were commonly woven in her country. Chihaya revealed she didn't know about weaving, so Maria decided to teach her. As Ulite inspected the necklace further, they noticed a swarm of cats filled the doorway, staring intensely at the gem. A while later, Dagmeier was plotting with his assistant, but he noticed Kenshi being praised for his hard work by a bunch of girls, and the jackass got irritated by it. That evening, while Chihaya was distracted, Kenshi ran out for his evening crystal search, but he noticed a masked intruder sneaking around. The spy tries to attack him, but he easily puts her down before another strange lady jumps in and saves her comrade. Kenshi chased them down and eventually lost them, but then he saw Dagmeier at the corner and asked him if he saw the intruders. Dagmeier sent him elsewhere, and his assistant, who was actually the masked intruder, retrieved some files which she gave him. Kenshi chased the second masked lady into the forest only for her to ask if he was from an alternate world before blinding him with a flash grenade and making her escape. Once Kenshi noticed she'd escaped, he ran into Mexia in her bath clothes, who also said she was searching for the intruders. Not long after that, Ulite went through the stolen documents, which were actually the blueprints for Wahanli's Kikujin, while he discussed Dagmeier with his father through a comms device. The next day, Wahanli and the gang reported the incident to the principal, who promised to investigate the matter further. A while later, Wahanli discussed the matter with Maria and Yukain, explaining that the documents stolen weren't really important since she'd obtained actual combat data. They then geeked out about Seikijins, particularly the white and black ones that attacked the swan earlier, and they wondered who those skilled pilots were. At the other end, Chihaya asked what Kenshi was doing outside the night of the robbery, and knowing she'd smoke his ass if she found out, he turned the tables by asking if she'd fixed his necklace, and she lost her shit before his fangirls at the academy showed up and started kissing his ass. Ulite drank more of Kenshi's medicine as he watched him through the window and plotted with a mysterious voice again. A while later, Kenshi was living his handyman life while Lashara and the principal talked about him. The principal brought up Kenshi's lack of education before asking why he had to work for his food and why he hadn't been given any of the salaries he'd earned from his day job. The Queen of Thieves lied that she was saving it for his tuition, which made the principal suggest he schooled at the academy since his pay for the year could cover the tuition. Lashara tried to point out that he was a dumbass, but the principal shut her up by showing her a test which he'd scraped through. That evening, Chihaya asked if enrolling that quickly was alright, but Lashara said he was recommended by the entire church. So it was fine, but he'd have to keep his status as a Seikishi a secret. The next day, Kenshi put on his uniform and realized he'd be going to Maria's class. This made Lashara freak out and warned him to keep his RIZZ away from her cousin. But Chihaya and Kenshi walked away. On their way to the academy, they met up with Lapis, who'd been instructed to guide Kenshi. As she ran off with him, Lashara and Chihaya decided to tail them and got jealous watching them bond. As Lapis showed Kenshi around a nearby pond, some upperclassmen tried to run her off, but when she introduced herself as Kenshi's guide, they switched moods rather easily. Lapis later explained that upperclassmen are treated as elites at the academy, unlike the underclassmen. But the male Seikishi were treated highly regardless of their class, but Kenshi denies being one of those. Nixaya soon caught Lashara and Chaya eavesdropping and dragged the pesky princess ass straight to class. A while later, Kenshi introduced himself to his class and Ulite, who was the homeroom teacher, announced a test which he dismissed the class to go prepare for. Kenshi remembered that Chaya told him to greet the royals and male Seikishi specially, so he exchanged pleasantries with Maria in person before greeting the handful of guys in the class and taking his seat. During the lunch break, the cool guys in the class ditched Kenshi because of his bad breath, but a nerdy-looking guy named Ceres approached him. Ceres explained that the other douchebags went for a special etiquette training, and since Kenshi was a resident jungle boy himself, he realized he'd need the training and followed Ceres there. A while later, Dagmar saw Chaya struggling with her weaving practices, and she explained that she was doing it for Kenshi before he got called off by some other students. Meanwhile, Kenshi had fun learning about tea, dance, and flowers while the principal met up with the teachers to ask about the new students, to which Ulite and the other teachers agreed that Kenshi was already topping the other male students in class. During combat training, Kenshi was given a wooden sword and made to spar with Mixaya, while Lithia and Aura watched from a corner. Mixaya told him to defend her attacks, and they were all stunned to see how easily he did that. She asked if he'd trained in swordsmanship, but Samurai Jackass replied that it's just some old geezer that taught him what he knows. Mixaya proceeded to train the rest of the class, and when the principal asked why Kenshi wasn't joining them, she said he was already on a league of his own, and even she would lose if she challenged him to a fight. A while later, Lappy's brought to notice how the male assholes in his class were trying to bully him. Mixaya and the girls looked on as 4 of them surrounded him and tried attacking him with their wooden swords, but Kenshi evaded them easily until they gassed out. Sometime after that, Maria realized he was the pilot of the white Seikijin that attacked Lashara earlier on. But Yukine couldn't hear a word she said since she had completely fallen for his RIZZ. Maria decided to get Kenshi on their side, thinking it'd be a waste to let her dumb cousin have such a skillful guy. The next day during lunch period, Kenshi ran out of class to help out the caterers since he was an addicted workhorse. While doing other chores, he encountered Yukine carrying Maria's food, so they decided to head back to class together. Kenshi tried to have lunch with his new best friend Ceres, but Maria interrupted by asking him to eat with her instead. She saw that Kenshi didn't want to leave Ceres behind, so she invited him to join them. Ceres knew he was a loser, so he was about to refuse the offer before he noticed the rest of the guys in class giving him the stink eye. This made Maria invite all the boys in class to dine with her. After school, Kenshi was talking with his friends Lappies and Ceres when Lashara interrupted and on about he was her servant, and how he should back the off her cousin. That evening, Chaya gave him the woven necklace, and Maya saw that she used red strings and told her it symbolized love, so her face turned bright red and she chased Kenshi around to take the necklace back and redo it. Meanwhile, Lappies met up with Lithia and they plotted about Kenshi.